Good morning. Good morning. Can we have everybody sit down, please? Good morning. No. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the Friday, May 12th, 2023 Governing Board Workshop, and we do have a quorum. And if you'll join me, we'll stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, our first order of business is the approval of the minutes from April 14th Governing Board Workshop. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes? Okay, then they will stand as written. We do have some unfinished business from a prior meeting, and that is the Sports Pavilion Committee update, the Restaurant Bar Committee Working Group. And Lisa, will you let us know what's going on?
I will. Oh, how's that? Okay. So the subcommittee met, and where we stand is, there's Carly, there you are. Oh. Okay, so they've submitted a great drawing, and the committee is going to meet one more time, I believe, before the June meeting. Carl, is that correct? Okay. I thought that there was some minor topic discussion updates that had come out of Wednesday's Sports Pavilion meeting. But I'll talk to Joe about that. Okay. Barring that happening, there's going to be, coming out of the June Sports Pavilion meeting, a recommendation coming to the governing board from that.
Okay.
And that's where we're headed. So you'll see a recommendation coming from the governing board from this drawing. They've done a great job from this. It's my understanding from Carl that it won't change the capacity, but it gives us what we need in the way of the ADA compliance, correct? And it helps everybody be able to get in the door without causing any conflict at the door. And with the bar, we'll now have 2 cash registers, and there'll be hopefully no issues there, and we'll be able to move forward and help everybody, and the band will be able to continue on. So,
okay. Thank you.
That's it.
Dick, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Is there going to be a capacity issue in that room? I mean, if so many people, and how are we going to enforce it?
No, we're not. As far as I know, we're not even to capacity now. Are we, Carl?
Well, I would say we certainly get to capacity on Friday night.
Well, we do get to capacity with this, but
That's important.
Yeah.
And then some of the complaints that had come from that capacity meeting moments on Friday nights was the ADA layout, making sure we're not moving tables, chairs for our own needs, but staying compliant. So this meets that, and we would manage that to make sure that doesn't happen. But this plan here doesn't change occupancy.
I guess the question it's not really a question, it's more of a situation that I have is that we've been over there during some of the busier times, and the currency of value was table space and chairs. And I was looking at this, and it seems to me that we're still going to be facing that issue with tables and chairs, and I don't know if it's anything we can really talk about or even do anything about right now, but it's just a concern I have when I think about the renovations we're doing there.
The subcommittee was asked to create a better bar environment, move the bar, have some food conversations. We went through all those things, but occupancy kind of rules the room per code. So this is at max occupancy, and this does have more table seating than we currently have. But the discipline will be staff managing that it doesn't get moved and that we don't overseed our capacity on a Friday night. So it is possible, based on staying compliant, that you can't have any more people than what the room allows, so.
Carl, do you know what the capacity of the room is?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Oh, Sharon?
I'd asked before whether or not we had any way of telling who was coming in as far as whether they were a resident or a non-resident. And I noticed that in one of the policies, it says that preferential treatment shall be given to residents of Sun City West versus non-residents. So if we don't check cards at the door, how do we know who's there and whether or not we're turning away somebody that is a resident versus allowing somebody from another area to come in?
It's my understanding, but I could be wrong, that the bowling alley is a public venue for us, so we don't check cards, resident versus membership. I mean, that discussion's generally making sure that we get fair to our bowling play, but.
I'm just talking about Lizard Acres.
No, I know, so we don't do card checks.
Okay,
You are
so,
correct, Carl. It is a public facility.
okay, so then the policy that we have now that currently says
What policy is that?
It's a bowling policy, BO1, and it deals with activities in the bowling alley. Bowling.
Right.
right, so I'm just saying then something needs to be changed because we're not giving preferential treatment to the residents of Sun City West. The policy states that we will.
I think that applies to, if I'm not mistaken, that policy applies to the activities within the bowling restrictions. I don't think it's Lizard Acres. I don't think it applies to Lizard Acres.
I understand, but Lizard Acres is in the bowling alley, so somewhere in there, people are going to come and make the comment that it says that I get preferential treatment over, it doesn't say bowling alley, it is in the bowling part, I don't disagree with you, but I'm not sure that everybody understands that. That's what I'm trying to say. Because I would have assumed we were checking cards, because one Friday night when I was there was 15 people that came in from Grand together as a group.
I believe it.
So again,
Yeah.
then if those 15 were there, somebody else from Sun City West wouldn't be able to come in if they met them too many people.
I think this is a good discussion point for the Sports Pavilion Committee.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Sharon.
Sure.
Anyone
Thank
else?
you.
Ann?
Yes, Tim. What is our capacity and who's going to monitor when we get to capacity and make sure that no more get in?
I don't have that data on what the absolute capacity is. I wasn't prepared for that, but it's somewhere in the 200 range, just about max. This seating is for 171, so that it allows for how we like to use the room, which is a bit of entertainment and dancing. In technicality, that is an unknown factor, so even my architectural staffing said that I need to represent that with like a pool table or a shuffleboard to kind of eat up that space, if you will, because dancing is an unknown, and that will be problematic with getting, county to approve and stay within occupancy and not trigger the bathroom issue. So right now, this count and is for us to discuss and see that this is how we like to use the room. But in truth, it will take us to manage occupancy. That's the most important thing. So if we don't have a pool table and a shuffleboard table, creatively showing the gap filled up, then it'll come down to management.
Okay. Any other questions for this topic? Okay. Moving down to new business, 4.01 ClubTrack Subcommittee Update, final report overview. Jack?
Thank you. The ClubTrack Subcommittee provided its final report earlier this month. The subcommittee was formed in October of 2022 and was charged with two tasks: to define a standard report that could be sent to clubs that are helpful for the clubs, but it will also work within the existing ClubTrack capabilities. We didn't want to be developing new stuff. And the second charter was to develop a list of ideas for future ClubTrack enhancements. So the subcommittee surveyed the chartered clubs, figure out who was receiving reports, because a file dump was being sent out via email. They make sure that we had the correct information, to make sure that everybody was, who was supposed to get the reports are getting them. They did focus groups to assess the current ClubTrack usage. 43 clubs attended that. And then any clubs that did not attend were contacted, so we did sample the entire base, and then finally a ClubTrack report was agreed upon, and it was started to be sent out to the clubs in the first quarter of this year. And then they went back and did an assessment to make sure that those who were supposed to receive the reports were receiving them, and this was in addition to the file dump that was going out. So it was a report. There were, the results of the surveys were presented to Casey Huda and Katie O'Grady so that they knew what was going on. Then a second survey was sent out, again, to make sure that people were receiving the reports. We got 24 clubs responded to that. This was after deciding on which new report was going to be sent out. Of the clubs that responded, there were 24 of them. 2 were receiving the reports and 22 were not. So that was indicated that we needed to do some additional work. Then there were training sessions held in January and then again in April. And in April, 47 clubs were represented. Of those 9, only 9 were still not receiving the reports, and 6 were unsure if they were receiving the reports. So we made an improvement. We still got about 20 to 30% of the clubs that were not getting their reports. Regarding the enhancement task, information from all of the clubs was gathered and compiled, not only clubs but IT and the ClubTrack users on staff. And the decision was made that until the reports are stable, accurate, and consistent, future enhancements are on hold. They're not going to be forthcoming at this point. But the net of it is that the good news is we've got a report that has been sent out to clubs. About basically 70 to 80% of them are receiving it. The balance are not, so there's still some work that needs to be done there. And there are a lot of variables that can go into reasons why that's not happening. I don't want anybody to think that somebody's not doing their job, but there are reasons. Because they're being sent out by email, they may end up in a spam folder or a junk folder, something like that. So there are other reasons beyond the control of internal here to get the reports out. But one of the things that did come back from all of this work that was done is that there's not a lot of enthusiasm for ClubTrack from the clubs because they don't see value that it provides to the clubs, and that the report that they're getting doesn't seem to be useful or something that they value. Now, one of the things that was announced when ClubTrack went out is that ClubTrack was a tool for management and for the governing board to understand space utilization, and it was not necessarily for the clubs. But what this says to me is that there needs to be more value provided to the clubs in order to get greater compliance and agreement in using ClubTrack, so that it's a bit of a so it's a partnership. It's a two-way street. So that's where this subcommittee has finished its job. It produced the report, and we know what's going to happen, where we stand with the enhancements. The other thing that happened is a separate work group was formed. Any questions on that before I move to the next point? Any from the committee or the board?
How long do you think it's going to take for the rest of the ClubTrack items to come up?
You mean the next bullet point?
Yeah.
I mean, I can go through that. Maybe that'll answer some of the questions.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to go right ahead and move to 4 point.
Jack, before you do that.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if you really want the question now, because I don't want to sidetrack you on this.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess the thing that concerns me, and I've heard this before, is the clubs have little use. They don't see much value in ClubTrack. Okay, have we actually looked into that? I mean, what are they looking for that we can't provide them? You know, and can we provide it to ensure that the club sees value in the information that we're giving them? Because we don't need to reinvent a wheel if the wheel doesn't fit, you know?
Part of the challenge is that the way that ClubTrack is set up, it's kind of like trying to drive your car without a speedometer. You know there are speed limits, but you don't have a way to measure how well you're doing against the speed limits. And you know that there are penalties if you're caught for speeding. So what they're looking for is a report or a set of reports that lets them know that how they're being measured on their participation. Because when ClubTrack was announced, participation numbers were the key to whether or not a club got to maintain the use of its space. So until they know what the actual numbers are and that the data is reliable, we've discovered some inconsistencies that have been addressed, but there are still some issues about missing data when a system is not usable. So there are a lot of things that need to be changed in how it's working.
Go ahead.
So I guess I still don't see that we've got an answer, you know, because it's not just the usage. You know, let's lift it up about another 1,000 feet. We, as a planning board, as a planning body, need to look at utilization of all space, you know, and underutilization and overutilization. You know, it seems to me, and I'm not trying to be difficult about this, but it seems to me that we need to identify those points or that bits of information that's going to be relevant and meaningful to the clubs, and then try to build around that so we can provide that information to them. Because otherwise, we're just building on something that is seen with little value.
So hold that thought, and hopefully I'll cover it in the next report.
Lisa?
I'm not sure, maybe this is something you're going to cover too, but this is something that I know we initially paid for, but this is something that we continue to pay for monthly, or as it's clicked, people are clicking to check in, and how does that work, Jack?
The specifics, I would have to rely on Katie to give the specifics, but we're paying, my understanding is around $30,000 a year for this system, plus there is a charge per fee per swipe. I don't know if that's included in that 30K or not.
I'm sorry, Katie.
Yeah, so the 30,000 about a year includes those swipes, so it's the Azure server, it's all the connection fees. We have certs on the local machines now. And it's because it's coming from like 35 or so different computers at this point, plus then we have ongoing support and report support. So to my knowledge, every person that wasn't receiving a report was a typo in the email, or they marked it as spam. And again, to my knowledge, we've fixed 100% of the reporting issues. So if there's more than that, I just need to know. I haven't been brought up in the loop on those.
Okay, any other
Does that
questions?
answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, and I think to Katie's point, part of the problem with the email delivery is that there are typos in email addresses, those types of things. Part of it too is many of our recipients are not as technologically savvy as others, so there are some, operator errors on the other end. So, that's part of the reality of what we have.
Okay. Jack?
Okay, let's go ahead to 4.02, a new working group was created. This is called the Space Utilization Requirements Work Group, and it was formed to consider the needs of the Recreation Division and Operations Management when it comes to how association space is utilized. The work group is comprised of members from the chartered clubs and properties committees and people who are or have been chartered club officers and who have been managing their space. So when ClubTrack was initially proposed some years ago, it does provide club participation data. It does not meet the original problem it was intended to solve, which goes to Dick's point, is how well does the association utilize its space? So what the work group has decided to do is we're focusing now on the business needs first, rather than taking a technical approach up front. So we've had 4 meetings so far and have developed a list of about 100 requirements to measure and manage space utilization and participation. So we're going above and beyond, and this includes things like reports and that sort of thing. We've also broadened the scope a bit. We're not focusing just on chartered clubs. What we're looking at now are all potential users of association space. So that might be organizations or residents that want to rent the social hall for a family reunion or something like that. So we're also looking at different types of users, club users, facilities users, the administrators of systems, so that we're looking at the total audience of who the stakeholders are and who have a vested interest in whatever we might do. So requirements such as various types of reports, depending upon whether you're a club or you're a recreation division manager, security and access control. We've targeted 5 nines, which is 99.999% data accuracy. Ease of use, to address some of the challenges we've had with ease of use of ClubTrack, failover capabilities to recover data when the system is unavailable, the ability to integrate with existing systems, be able to pass data back and forth with, say, for example, the scheduling system or the membership system. Of course, a requirement to comply with whatever the IT technology stack will be. Katie, I just sent you an email to invite you to our one of our meetings coming up because we want to gather your requirements as well. So all of those kinds of things. We've got about 100 requirements. The group is going to prioritize those requirements at our next meeting. So we'll begin that process, and then that will inform us in terms of what we recommend going forward. We will also, at some point, depending upon where we are, we may also talk to Cliff about finance, any cost things that we may have to look at. But our goal is to, by the end of June of 2023, to have a priority, list of priorities, a set of recommendations that can be acted upon in the next fiscal year. So that's, any questions on that? Yes, Sharon.
I know that, I believe committees can't be more than 1 year and then they disband. Is this committee going to be put into place for next year as well? Or are you attempting to do that so that the continuity continues?
We can do that. At this point, we've only planned up through the end of this year. It'll depend upon what the recommendation is from the Chartered Clubs Committee and to the board at that point.
Any other questions?
I do.
Dick?
I want to, and Jack, just to be clear, when you talk about gathering this will actually capture the data points and the information that the clubs are looking for as well. That will be part of that.
Absolutely, they are a key stakeholder in this, and in my experience, the best way to make something successful like this is to have buy-in both from a technology standpoint and from the business side, because they're the ones whose business and their operations are going to be affected. So they have to have an ownership of it, frankly.
Sharon again?
Sorry. What happens with the rooms that are just open, where you can just come in and use them? Is that tracked in a separate way?
Right now, if there's an open room and somebody goes into the room and there's no monitor in the room, if they choose to scan in, then they scan in. If they choose not to scan in, there's no way to enforce it.
Okay, so because we have the room that's open where you can go in and exercise, referring
Oh,
to
the
that
fitness
one.
on demand room?
Yeah, yeah. So again, do you scan in that automatically, or do you have to in order to use the room, or do you, is it just open? Because that would seem to me to be one of the ways of finding out if people, because I get asked a lot, can I go use the yoga room? Can we just have it open so that I could go in and use it when no one's there? I don't know the answer to that question, because I don't think we have a use yet to do that in that way.
So I'm going to make a guess here that the fitness on demand room does not have a ClubTrack station, because at this point, we're only tracking club usage. The fitness on demand room does have a program that you can use if you want to do a specific activity, and it'll project it up on the screen. But if you choose not to do that, I mean, we do have a rule that says that you cannot be in a room by yourself. Yeah, right, you gotta have two people, exactly.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, Jack. We're going to move on to 4.03, Sports Pavilion, bowling age restriction, and I have to laugh because on Wednesday, Lisa had the meeting of her committee, the Sports Pavilion and Bowling Committee, and there were 72 people here. I mean, if you look at what we have here, 72 people. And it was because that there was an erroneous report on social media that we were trying to open our bowling to 19-year-olds, which is not the case. Okay, let me just give you a little background on how we are age-restricted community. Sun City West is allowed to be an age-restricted community under the Fair Housing Act, and it's another part of the Housing for Older Persons exemption. Under the HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Regulations, Title 24, Subpart E, Sections 100.300 and 100.308. The exemption is also provided in Arizona statute, Title 41. Okay, in order to maintain having an age restriction, the association has to do several things. One, it actually has to have written rules, policies, regulations, covenants, and deed or other restrictions that says this will be a community of 55 and over. We have to project that image out to the people who are looking to come into our community. And we also have to have age verification procedures, which is what we do with the CC&R department. Plus, we actually have to enforce the rules that this is an age-restricted community. So what all this came down to in bowling was at 2 meetings ago, the general manager brought up the question of, can we synchronize the age limits that we have at our various locations? We have it for the pool. We have policy FA08, which basically says any guest under 16 and under has to be accompanied by an adult, a responsible adult. We also have policies that say when our card holders come into facilities, they have to show their card to get scanned in. Okay, anyone bringing guests the person bringing the guests has to scan them in using their card, and at that point they can buy a guest pass, which is good for the rest of the day, that they can go and use other facilities. So this discussion somehow got warped into, we're gonna let young people into our bowling leagues. No, that is not the case. So what we're trying to do is, we're looking at the bowling policies. We're gonna try to have a more clear definition of some of the terms. What exactly is a special event? What exactly is a activity? The policy says that we will allow people 45 years and older from neighboring communities, and that's up to the general manager to give us a definition of what exactly those communities are. So, and I think there's one other thing that we need to get a definition of that slips in my mind right now, but that is work that will be done by Lisa's committee, and she has a question.
No, I was going to just let you know the other thing that was slipping your mind was the definition of a responsible adult.
Right. Oh, wow, that was... If you want to, the meeting's on YouTube, and the discussion over a responsible adult took quite a while. So that is still in discussion. So that's what that agenda item is. So 4.04, public street parking, 303 billboards.
Speaking of slipping of mind, let me. On the first issue, Katie, we don't have anything presentable relative to the street parking scenario. But I just want to give you all just a heads up relative to a new law that was passed by our governor recently when it comes to planned communities. If we have CC&Rs that basically deal with what you can and cannot do on roads that we do not manage, there is now a required election that has to happen for us to retain the existing CC&R rules and regulations that we have to keep them in order. So over the course of between now and 2025, we have to have an election, and we'll have several before the deadline. But the owner members here need to vote on whether or not they want to keep the street parking portions of our CC&Rs in order. So a majority vote will keep things in place, and a non-majority vote, basically the streets then go back to Maricopa County and people can do whatever they'd like to do on them, which means parking RVs, parking boats, parking trailers up and down residential areas. And so since we don't maintain the roads, Maricopa County kind of wants to take them back and do things as they see fit. So I know you've all been in residential areas where they don't have CC&Rs and cars are parked on both sides of the roads. It can get a little tough navigating there, especially for when you talk about public service vehicles, be it police or fire, trying to get through a narrow road with cars parked all over the place. So we have CC&Rs in place that basically regulate what we do here. And basically the new law that has come in, and you can Google it if you like, but it's House Bill 2298. Our attorney will be providing information come August, but this is relatively new. We just want to get this out in front of folks. But we'll do a little bit of marketing on this and just let you all know. But an election will come up for the owner members here to decide whether or not they want to keep the parking portions of our CC&Rs in order. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Sharon?
Not really a question. I happened to be down at the Capitol yesterday and spoke with Representative Payne. He was the only no vote on the entire legislature against the bill, and he tried to keep Sun City West out of this.
Okay.
So just going forward, I think that somewhere in here, if we had notified, according to Representative Payne, if we'd have notified them that this was a big problem here, we would have been able to at least have Pora or somebody from the rec center, somebody go down and explain to them why this was difficult for this particular community.
Right.
Because they don't have planned communities, a lot of them like this, and they didn't really realize what that was going to do. Kevin tried his best, but that didn't work.
Right.
So again, it's just a matter of making sure that we get information. He knows what it does to Sun City and Sun City West. This specifically was supposed to be for Sun City. That's the reason that it was written.
Okay.
So it was not supposed to include us.
Yeah.
So just so everybody knows.
Right. And there are a lot of planned communities throughout Arizona, all over the state, that this does affect. So, right. But if you're, for instance, if you're a gated community where Maricopa County does not affect your roads and you have to maintain your own roads here, this doesn't pertain to you. But since Maricopa County is the one overseeing our roads, they want to make sure that we still want to do what we do as far as keeping people away from parking there for long term and doing mechanical work in their driveways and those types of things. So if we want to maintain our CC&Rs, an election is needed, and that will take place. And Katie and the media team will be all over that, and we'll be making sure we get information out.
Okay. I'm sure we'll hear about this several times.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on to 4.05.
Is this the one? I got one more on the
Oh,
billboards.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay.
Oh, the
Okay.
303 loop. Yeah.
The 303?
Sorry.
Yeah. On May 4th, the City of Surprise had a planning and zoning meeting, and in that meeting, they issued a conditional use permit to a construction company. We did send James Riley, who kind of oversees our properties here in Sun City West, over to that meeting. There were representatives from Sun City West in the house. as well as Cortobella. But basically, a conditional use permit for billboard signage along the 303 was presented and ultimately approved and granted. So it basically runs about in linear, about 147th Avenue across Loop 303. This is kind of a diagram as to kind of where that situation is. It's on the other side of 303 based on our retaining wall here in Sun City West. So it's on the other side of the highway. But if you were to kind of walk north from the third hole at Deer Valley, ultimately that's kind of the line you would have to take to run into these particular billboards. Please advance. Thank you. The reason a lot of folks did not get notification, nor did we, in a planning and zoning issue, is that the law requires that they notify all residents in and around the area of a 300-foot radius. And you can see here that where these billboards are being proposed, we are outside that 300-foot level. And then this diagram also shows if you were to look at a billboard, if you were on the freeway, you would have a dead-on 0%. You'd be staring right at it. And then where you are kind of eventually getting in and around, looking at the sides of the things and that. These are big. You see these, I think, over by the stadium over in Glendale, but these are 50, 60 feet tall, 48 feet wide. And if you like Dr. Pepper, I guess you'll like looking at that out of your backyard. But just a heads up that this did get approved. And I am just, don't shoot the messenger, but I am just here telling you that story. And if you have any issues, please contact the City of Surprise on that one. But I don't have a construction date as to when these things are planning on going up, but the permit was approved on May 4th. Thank you.
Okay, any questions on this? Okay, thank you, Bill. We are going to move right along to 4.05. We have one bylaw and several policy changes and a couple of new policies that we actually approached at the very beginning of the year. We kind of waited till after the budget was, for the most part, taken care of, and now it's time to look at them. So this is actually the first reading of the policies. We don't have to vote on them at the governing board meeting later in the month, but we should vote on them either then or by the meeting in June, okay? So we'll just go through these, and I'll give you a little brief explanation of what these are. The first one is a change to a bylaw. It's bylaw 4.07, General Manager's Operational Meetings. And this was last reviewed back in 2020. Actually, we haven't had any GM Ops meetings since then. The last couple of administrations didn't see the need for GM Ops. They were reinstituted at the beginning of this year, and they've been very successful in providing information to and from the general manager. So what the bylaw change is, it revises the 2020 definition of the GM Ops meetings to coincide with the current nature of how we're actually handling the GM Ops meetings. And you can see there's several things that have been redlined on this policy. It's basically taking out some things that the reason they were stopped was because we were doing some of these things and it just didn't make sense. If we take those out and just rely on what we're actually doing at the meetings now, it makes a lot more sense. So if we have any comments on this, now's the time. If you would like to read them and comment on them later, that's perfectly okay. Any comments? Okay. You want to continue looking at these, or you want to move this to the general meeting in 2 weeks and vote on it then?
Is there anything,
Yes. Well, first I want a consensus. Should we move it to the meeting?
could I ask,
We won't need a motion to vote on.
Tim, is there any one of these that has a particular higher level of importance and something we should focus on, take an extra look at or maybe discuss now?
Well, GM Ops, because it's a bylaw, it's going to have to be posted in the paper. So we may not actually be able to vote on that until next year. But I just wanted to get it out now because we have a whole list of things to go through. Okay? Continue to look at it or move it to the meeting? Move it to the meeting. Consensus? Okay. Karen, we're going to move this to the general meeting. All right. Policy L2, conflict of interest. Early in the year, the board was discussing what appears to be a conflict of interest, okay? And appearances sometimes should be looked at. So basically what we're doing is adding to L2, conflict of interest, the statement that governing board directors shall not serve as chartered club board members at any time during their active board terms. Okay? Any comments or questions on this? No. Sharon? No, it's just renumbered. Okay, okay. Move it to the governing board meeting? Yes, all right. Sharon, we're gonna move L2 to the meeting too. All right. Policy L4. L4 deals with authorized use of association properties for political activities. And during the last legislative session, there were several changes made to how planned communities deal with political activity. And it's actually association-specific political activities, and that is political activities, electing board members, recalling board members, passing items like Bill's mentioning about having an election for the billboards, that sort of thing. So basically what we did was we split LO4, and we're going to revise it, authorized use of association property for civic political activities, meaning county, state, federal political activities. And we're going to generate a new policy, L13, the authorized use of association properties for association-specific political activities. And the wording from this was taken right out of the statute that was changed. I believe it was 1803, 1804. I'm not sure. It's one of those. So, it's got all new language in this. Is this up? This probably isn't in the same order since we changed it. Right. Okay. So if we can find L13. Okay. Most of this verbiage was taken right out of the statute, and it's statute 33-1808K that was passed last year in September. Okay. We looked at this at the very beginning of the year and set it aside because we had other things to do, but now would be the time to get this passed before the end of our session here. You want to look at this, continue, or move it on to the meeting?
I'd like to look at it only because it doesn't say flag in here. I want to just double check what it's saying because it's activity, but not necessarily. I just want to have a chance to read it over. I have not had a chance to read it over.
All right. We'll move this on to the next workshop then. We'll move both L4 and L13 over there because they go hand in hand. Yeah, it's cited in the document, 33-1808K. Civic political activity, any county, state, or federal politics. Okay, the differentiation is that civic, and the L13 is specific to our association. L13, right. Okay. Okay. We'll move on to L8 then. L8 is corrective fines and schedule for non-compliance fines. And just to make this, just add some clarity to this, we're talking about changing the title to Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, CC&R, Enforcement, Corrective Fines, and Schedule of Non-Compliant Fines. And basically what this does is it specifically, the governing board specifically gives the general manager the authority to enforce CC&R policies in our community. Question down there? I know they're not in order, so you might have to flip through them a little bit. Okay, so basically, we added the verbiage in the first paragraph under purpose. Through its oversight responsibility, the governing board of directors vests the general manager of the Recreation Centers of Sun City West, Inc., referred to as the association, and Arizona Planned Community Association, with the power and authority to enforce compliance with restrictions in the various recorded CCNRs in Sun City West by the uniform application of enforcement in a conscientious manner, by seeking voluntary compliance. As a complaint-driven procedure, the CCR process should be in a good faith effort with the goal of keeping our properties maintained.
Right now, it says Sun City
Well,
West.
that's what's written here. Just hang on one second. Let me find my other paper. After this was put together, as I sat and looked at it, that last sentence, it says the goal of keeping and then the community by keeping, to me sounded a little awkward. So I would recommend a change that says, with the goal of keeping Sun City West as a premier retirement community by assuring that the property, I'm getting my properties mixed up, by ensuring that the properties are properly maintained. There, I got it. Sharon?
Okay, instead of premier, shouldn't it just say planned retirement community? I don't care about premier, but it is a planned community. That's what it is.
Are you saying it should be a planned retirement community?
That's what it's called in the Arizona statutes, is a planned community. So I'm just saying that perhaps it needs to say that in this.
So replace premier with planned?
I would, but Dick likes the word premier, so you're going to have to talk to Dick.
Okay. Premier planned community? How's that?
This is, yeah.
I will. Okay, as a complaint-driven process, procedure, the CCNR process should be a good faith effort. Shall be. That means absolutely has to be. A good faith effort with the goal of keeping Sun City West a premier planned retirement community by assuring that properties are properly maintained. I tripped over my P's.
Properly.
Wait, sure. Mm-hmm. Premier planned. Right. Yes. And our CCNR enforcement policy is how we ensure to do that. The question down there. Yes, side comment, yeah.
Please
Okay.
move that one forward.
Move it to the meeting? Okay. Karen, we're going to move this to the meeting. Yes, it does, Bill. All right. With the last two, Standing Rule 3. Standing rules are like the third or fourth tier of instructions that we go by. Most of the standing rules have to do with conducting meetings. And during this last year, we've had some confusion as to what exactly a subcommittee is and where does it fall in the statutes and regulations. The statutes 33-1804 says that as a planned community, any regularly scheduled meeting must be open and must provide an agenda within 48 hours before, and there must be minutes afterwards that are available for review, okay? Through this last year, the idea of a subcommittee has actually morphed into working groups, okay? And working groups are not regularly scheduled. They're ad hoc. They can come up at any time. Most of the time, our working groups have been announced, okay? So that people, if they're interested, they will know what's going on. But we have not put out agendas because basically they're for gathering information, analyzing information, and coming up with recommendations that will then go to the standing committee. So what's being proposed is that we change the wording in Standing Rule 33 to remove the subcategory subcommittees and replace it with working groups to eliminate the confusion over what working groups do, how they report, and how they get scheduled. So that would change Standing Rule number 3, and it would create a new policy, C05, under committees, and this is the definition for standing committee working groups. Okay? Reasons for a working group include collection of data germane to the referred policy, analysis of the data, search for alternative policy recommendations, and formulating recommendations back to the committee. Okay? Working groups should be named, and the subject matter for the working group should be approved by the standing committee as follows. The subject matter should be in writing, have a discrete purpose, and be defined as narrowly focused as possible. Specific timelines for reporting and the duration of the working group. There should be specific deliverables of the working group and a proposed format for recommendations to report back to the standing committees. All right, the working group may contain a standing committee member to act as chair, but should also contain other Sun City West residents who have knowledge or expertise in the topic area. The working group chair may request through the standing committee chair that the governing board president that the general manager make appropriate staff members available to act as informational resources for the working group. A bright line needs to be developed that separates policy areas from operational areas. A bright line meaning a well-defined differentiation. Working group meetings are not specifically addressed in the Arizona statute 33-1804, but in the spirit of openness and transparency, notice of the working group meetings will be posted per the statute. Okay, and working groups are strictly for the gathering and analysis of supporting data and can be held without posted notice, agendas, or meetings. Working groups should not have as members current governing board directors, persons with a vested interest in the outcome, which would be a conflict of interest, and inappropriate staff members. Discussion.
I have a question, Tim.
Go ahead.
It says that the number 7 says that a working group should not have as a member a governing board director, but earlier it talks about membership of the committee. So we can't have someone that's on the governing board on the working group?
That's the policy that we followed this year with subcommittees. The directors are not on subcommittees.
So I thought the chair of the committee could not be, but I'm not arguing with it. I'm just trying to get it straight in my mind.
The chair of the standing committees are a governing board director.
Right, absolutely.
Right. As you get down to the subcommittee level, the working group level, as we are now calling it, it's more analysis of data and collecting of data. And the perception was that if a governing board member is on that collection of data process, that there is a implied approval that they're going to approve whatever the working group says. So that's why we've taken that tact.
Okay, I just didn't understand it. Thank
Okay,
you.
Sharon.
Okay, I have a problem with this because as you well know, you told me that I wasn't allowed to go to the golf meeting subgroup, and then you agreed that I could go, but I couldn't speak. And I have a problem with the fact that as a governing, and I understand your philosophy of it's going to get skewed because I'm there. But if I have expertise in a specific area and I'm the one who's brought up the project or whatever's there, why would I not be allowed to speak at the meeting and talk about it so that others would understand what it was? This is the only opportunity you have to do that unless you're going to have it at a working meeting out in like this. I mean, I don't know how else you get the information to the general group of people who's trying to collect data. If you have the data, you're the person who's brought a project to specifically to the area. Why would you not want that person to be included?
Well, if you're on a working group and I'll use a pet project, that,
No, not pet project.
well, you're the one who initiated it. So it's the project you initiated.
Correct.
It gives the perception to the people on the working group that the board, because you're there, is going to automatically approve what they do. And to get unskewed information, it's my opinion that board members should not be on these working groups.
Okay, but to that end, what they got was incorrect information. They got skewed information in a different direction, which was from staff. So I'm simply stating that there's more than one side to something, A, and B, I give our residents a whole lot of courage and information and knowing what they want or don't want. And I don't think we should limit the amount of your ability to give them all the information. And that's what we did. We didn't give them all the information. Lisa and I were both there, and Harry was as well, and we weren't allowed to speak. So we weren't allowed to correct anything that was wrong. So again, I don't think that you've defeated the purpose of having the working group. If it's specifically supposed to be to get data, you need it from everywhere you possibly can get it, not just a certain group of people. So
Okay.
I disagree.
Does anyone else have an opinion on this? Jack?
I tend to agree with Sharon. You know, if a standing committee is going to implement and want to, you know, set out a task for a group, you got to be able to keep it on track and make sure they don't go down a rat hole or on a side trip someplace.
Okay.
So I think that there needs to be, and the expertise factor too is also another part of it.
Lisa?
Thank you, Tim. I think what Sharon was trying to get across was not that she had wanted to actually be on the committee, but just that when she attended the meeting, that she had wanted to actually speak because she had knowledge, and that she wasn't, because she was a governing board director, she wasn't allowed to speak. And that was, I think, where she was going with that.
Okay.
And she wanted to make sure that we're clear that we're allowed to speak at the meetings, although we're not on the committee, and if that's addressed in here.
So you've had a subcommittee this year.
Correct.
Have you gone to those meetings?
I attended one, and I stayed away from the others so that I would, you know, not interfere with the subcommittee and any decision.
Well, we've had several subcommittees
Mhm.
this year. It would be interesting to take a poll of those members of the subcommittee and ask them if they felt that a governing board director would skew their opinions at the meetings.
That certainly would be an interesting
Okay,
thing.
we can do that. Ann?
I don't have a problem with keeping a governing board member from being on a working group or standing committee or whatever you call it, but I do think that a board member should be able to speak up as when they ask for participation from the audience or ask for input. And I think that should be construed as that person's personal input and not a representative of the board.
Do you think it'd be interpreted that way?
I don't know, because interpretation is up to the person who receives that information. You know, information sent can be one thing, information received can be another. But I do have a problem with shutting down a board member from at least being able to speak up as a member of the audience.
Okay. Let's see, Harry, you had a subcommittee. Would you give me, you have something to say? Go ahead.
I had one subcommittee, yes, and I totally stayed away from everything. I gave them the direction of what we needed.
Right.
Pat sat on the committee and, you know, was able to answer their questions, and they came back with the report, and So there was no reason for me to speak to the committee.
Right, okay. Harry and Lisa and Jack, do you have a subcommittee?
I agree with Harry. I think that that you have, when you appoint a working group or a subcommittee, you appoint people that you have confidence in and that they have the ability to sort kind of the wheat from the chaff. And I know that I've been in situations that I intentionally did not vote. Now, I do support Ann's point of a governing board director speaking, but I would have the disclaimer that I am speaking as a homeowner. We don't lose that, that position. I know I have members on my Budget and Finance Committee that always clarify I'm speaking as a homeowner and don't have ownership to any of the committees that you're on. I believe our homeowners are savvy enough to understand that we have our own positions as well. And it may be different. We may vote differently. You know, we've had that example of that several times this year. So I guess I agree with Harry. I understand. I think it's okay to go, but I think I would steer clear from speaking. But on the other side, I think that we have the right as homeowners to express our position.
Okay. Ann, you have not Ann, I'm sorry, Kay, do you have a comment? Okay. All right. Lisa?
Tim, I do have a question. Dick, wasn't there a committee that, I don't think it was, maybe not this year, but last year that you were, you chaired as BNF committee?
Mea
Correct
culpa,
us.
mea culpa, mea culpa.
Okay.
I was afraid somebody would surface that. So I'm going to claim innocence on that one because that was my first month or so in the chair. And we were working with Cliff and Pete and those, and I think we were, so yeah, I'm going to blame Cliff for this. No, I'm not. But I did chair that, and after it was over, Tim and I talked about that, and it was not appropriate for me to do that. But the way that in my defense, the way that we structured the outcome, it was really blind, double blind scoring. So thank you for pointing that out.
Always happy to help.
Don't throw anybody under the bus.
All right, is there consensus that we should change standing committees' title to working groups? And subcommittees, excuse me. I got my S's mixed up too. Okay, so the only point of contention is whether or not current governing board director should be on the working group. Okay, if the directors that have had subcommittees will send me a list of their subcommittee members, I'll poll them and ask them what type of response they would have.
Tim,
Sharon.
just a comment. I don't have any problem with the current governing boards not being on as members. I just have a problem with them not being able to ever speak at a meeting.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. And
Excuse me, but does it say in the policy that we can't attend or can't speak?
no, it just says you can't be as a member of the committee.
Yeah, well, then it should be fine, shouldn't it? Because we could go to a
Well, we could,
working group.
so that there's no confusion in the future, we could specify that.
Okay. And I think we would be under the same auspices that we try to put others when they speak with a 2-minute limit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you'll send me those names, I'll send out a thing and we'll come up with some other verbiage. We will not pass this on to the governing board workshop, or the meeting will wait for the next workshop. Okay? That is the list of the bylaws and policies that we had to review. Cliff, are you ready? Proposed 23-24 budget presentation update.
Good morning, Mr. Hurley, Governing Board Committee. Today, I've got the updated budget, which doesn't include any changes in the fiscal year 24 budget. It does have an updated projection through March. So March year-to-date actual and projected April, May, and June. I will say the projection was a nominal change in the projected column. So we did a pretty good job of projecting April, and we feel good about March, and we feel good about the April through June portion of that. With that being said, I'm ready to field any specific questions there might be from the board on the budget itself, but since last presented, there are no changes.
Have there been any changes to the reserve fund allocation amount?
No.
Okay.
For projected reserve fund allocation for 23, yes, it decreased, but for the current year, it was a very small change just because of the percentage, the way the projection, the budget was working off the projection.
Okay, and how are we looking on APFs so far this year?
So far this year, we are on track for about 1,014, 1,012, somewhere around there, based on that. May is actually, I've got some May updated numbers actually that Riley provided before he went on vacation this week. And in terms of APF fees for the first week of May last year, we had 59 APF fees, and the first week of this year we had 44, which is actually doing much better. And then the inquiries, 28 last year and 38 this year in May.
Wow.
So
Good.
yeah,
Good
yeah.
news.
So it seems to be picking up. We'll see what happens, but
Okay. Good work, Dick. Your committee recommended reducing that to exactly the right amount. What about golf rounds?
Golf rounds, we're going to be, we should end up, well, for the month of April, we ended up a little bit over budget, 600 off of last year rounds. But in terms of budget, we were a little over budget for the month of April, and we're tracking at about 320 for the year versus 333 last year.
Okay. So that's fairly in line with what the change of the assumptions was.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
We were really conservative last year when we looked at Grandview specifically in April, May, and June. So that's coming in a little hotter than what we had projected, but we did that on purpose because we weren't sure what the impact of that would be.
All right. Are there any other questions from the directors? Lisa?
Cliff, I just have a question regarding the budget. I thought when we had voted, there was a question regarding the pickleball lighting, the 309,000, that we had voted to remove that, but it's still in here?
Yeah, I didn't remove it because the final budget hasn't been approved. So
Okay.
the final vote, I believe, on the capital is on May 25th. So it's in there, and it's the impact of that 309,000. It's just going to go back on the reserve study. So what's going to happen, it's going to come out of the spend, but the denominator is going to increase by that amount. So it doesn't change the FFB percent in terms of the impact of that decision. It just gets kicked down the road. It doesn't move the needle for FFB percent. But I didn't remove it completely yet because we haven't completed the budget.
Shouldn't the line item come out? I mean, we voted it out, so.
Right.
When we pushed into next year is what we voted, and I don't.
Shouldn't it be moved from the 24 column to the 25 column now?
It was funny because I talked to Pete about that, but in terms of, and we came to the conclusion that until the final was approved on the capital spend, that we would leave it there, but I can move it now.
Yes. I would think, move it to 25?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Taking everything else out that we.
Right. So
What's that?
all of the other capital that we disallowed early on in the year, that's all been removed. Softball,
Yes,
The new
yeah,
capital?
yes, that never made it to the,
Okay,
Listen,
all right.
good eye, Lisa.
Yeah, good.
go
good.
for it. That was intentional, I left it on there, but I can intentionally take it out. That's no problem.
Good eye, Lisa.
It wasn't an oversight.
All right.
I guess is what I'm
Are
saying.
there
But good
any other
question.
questions about the budget for Cliff? All right, we'll all have consensus that we're ready to move this for a vote at the meeting in the 25th? Yes. Okay, all right, great. Thank you, Cliff.
I'll make those changes and we'll update. Oh, one other thing, we are posting, we do have, there was some feedback from the community that the budget wasn't very visible on the website. So we have created a specific link and it's in the announcements page, and it'll take you right there, take you right to the budget, and I'll update that capital thing and make sure
Okay.
that gets updated as well.
All right, am I missing something, or is the new capital that was approved, is this in here? I'm not seeing.
Only in the form of the, yes, it is, but not specifically called out. It's not in this budget packet posting to this, but
It will be in the one we vote on?
yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, it's in there. That's how she found that one line item that it's
Well,
still
that's-
listed on
that-
there.
That's the R&R portion, but we're talking
Right.
about the new budget items that were voted to approve. We pulled out a couple.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, that'll be attached
Lisa?
in the vote.
This question is pretty simple. Cliff, would it be possible to get that before, the night before, not the night before our meeting? Because we have to go through that and look at it and,
Yeah, you should be getting that before the night before, so
But it
I'm
needs to
not
be
sure.
posted 48 hours before.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, okay.
So it'll be updated completely.
Because I know sometimes there's a little bit of a lag and, okay.
Yes, so specifically with the budget, it'll be updated completely out for the community and everywhere by mid-next week.
Okay,
And then as far as the agenda goes,
that'll be
it'll
the
be at
final.
least 48 hours before.
Okay, that'll be the final then.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, I was just informed that the new stuff actually is in, it's interminged amongst the R&R budget. Okay, there's allowances and there's also
Yes, it is in there. That's how she found the 309. But I will say that was intentional. That wasn't an oversight, but I'll remove it. But I will include the actual spreadsheet. I know which one you're referring
Yeah.
to, Tim, and I'll make sure that that's on there as well.
right. Make it as easy as us and you can, please.
Okay, I will.
All right. Thank you, Cliff. Sharon?
Cliff, you said that you would get me some information about the administration figures from the ops meeting. I haven't seen anything yet. We had
Okay.
questions. I mean, I
I
don't
have
need it
s-
here. I just said, ask if I could see it.
Yes.
Okay.
What information was this?
In the ops meeting about why we had an increase of 30% in the admin.
So the increase she's referring to is from 2014, 15 budget through 2020, 24. I put some numbers together for the last 5 years, and I have those with me. I shared them with Harry before, but I'm happy to share those with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Nothing else for Cliff? All right, thank you, Cliff.
You're welcome.
All right, that brings us to board comments. Harry, do you have any comments? Lisa?
No comments.
Jack?
None.
Ann?
None.
Dick?
No comment?
Sharon?
Just one, the services offered in Surprise for people to be able to get around in the area are called We Ride, and they are free through June to take rides anywhere you need to go within an 8-mile radius. They have about 9 different stops. And so for our seniors here, as long as you go over and park your car at the Del Webb Hospital, you can call on their app and get a ride. And that will take you out to a number of different places, including Prasada and some of the restaurants there. It will take you to Fry's and Sprouts. And it will also take you over to the movie theater and back. So you can easily do it and see if you like riding with them. It's pretty cool. First time we've had any rides anywhere in the city of Surprise. And to that end, the ones in Sun City will do the same thing on their route of 8 around, and it's called the Wave. And again, theirs are free for 2 years. So just moving forward.
The Del Webb Banner Hospital on Meeker and Granite Valley?
Yeah, the Del Webb Hospital is one of their stops. So in order to be with their route, you have to be at one of their stops in order to go. So what happens originally is Northwest Valley Connect was designed as a nonprofit to take you to a spot doing first mile, last mile. A lot of people don't understand first mile, last mile, but the buses and transportation services were never designed to pick you up at your house and get you somewhere. So Northwest Valley Connect, you can call, you can ask for a ride. They will pick you up even from your home, take you to Del Webb Hospital, and you get off and there's an app on your phone. You say, I need a ride, and will pick you up and take you to one of those 8 places on there, including, you need to look them all up, because I know that Fry's and Sprouts is one of the area. I know that in the spring of next year, they will take you to the baseball game as well. So it just happens that we're in the Del Webb Hospital area, is still part of Sun City West, not necessarily Surprise. The intent will be to connect the 2 hospitals. That's what we're trying to work towards. So at some point we'll be able to have, because we have a lot of seniors in our community here that actually go to one hospital and then go to the other, to the 2 complexes back and forth. So we're trying to connect those pieces.
Okay, thank you, Sharon.
Sure.
Kate?
No
comment?
comment.
Okay. I'm going to open it up if we have any residents that want to make comments. Does anybody know where we can get tickets for the raffle?
Tim, get out your wallet.
Your pen has run out of ink. First, Sharon, I'd like to address this to Sharon because she's savvy as to what's happening in the, I don't know if it's senator, whatever the state legislature, but I was told, and this should be from a reputable source, that the no toll roads in Arizona passed, so that we would not, and the reason I bring this up, for the number of years as an automotive entity, we've worked with the Hobbyist Council to make sure that we don't have toll roads in Arizona, and I just, that was brought up to me. I don't know if you could maybe check on that for me, or if you would know.
I'll get you an answer.
Thank you so much. And by the way, I do have raffle tickets for our Mustang raffle car available. Cliff wants to buy some. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Any other residents have comments? Okay. Will you come up to the microphone, please? Give us your name and rec number.
Carl, great job with the pen again.
Last time I was up, I learned we're a nonprofit.
Name, please. Name and rec number, please.
Oh, Kerry Shimoleski, 12865.
Thank you.
We're nonprofit, and I was in the investment seminar that we had here, and I found out we get some pretty favorable treatments in that respect. So my question is, who sets our 90-10 fixed income portfolio? Is it the structure of being a nonprofit organization, or is it us?
It's us. The governing board makes that determination with recommendations from the Budget and Finance Committee.
Okay. So I'm a little slow, so it took me 3 hours to get home, and I'm thinking, well, if we have that favorable, because taxes are a big bite out of returns. And so I just, whipped up a quick spreadsheet. I just took Vanguard total market fund and Vanguard total stock market fund, total bond market fund and stock market fund. I just went 5, 10, 15 years. And I looked at the 5-year one, and it stood out to me, and you guys would know better, and it might be something on the side a little bit here or there. 5 years ago, my $4 million is, I think, what we have in the reserve is, no, it's more, whatever, is $4 million today, So
It's more than 4 million.
whatever the number is.
Okay.
30 million?
Right, closer.
Oh, this gets worse. So if I had $30 million in a general bond representing a fixed income, I'd still have $30 million today, 5 years later. And if I looked at a total stock market fund, which we wouldn't do, I would have doubled my money. Okay, and if I did a 50-50 portfolio, we would have came out pretty sweet. I got the numbers in my back pocket. But my point is, I'm submitting that should we look at the criteria of what's required from our endowment fund or reserve fund and maybe take a look at analyzing, not making any, I'm not suggesting we do something, but it just seems to me we're not even keeping up with inflation. I mean, to have X number of dollars 5 years ago and still have that same amount of old money sitting in there at the same amount, we're falling behind. So I'm just asking if that's something that the Finance Committee, which, by the way, I'm quite impressed with you guys, have been watching all the meetings or coming to the meetings, could look at that sometime in the next year? Or?
As part of their charter, they review each of the BNF policies each year.
Okay.
So they will be looking at that again at the beginning of the year.
They will be looking at that again?
September, October.
Okay.
Okay. And you're more than welcome to come to the BNF meetings.
I try to get to most of them,
Okay.
or I'll watch them online.
Good.
But the problem is online, like especially when I'm a snowbird, you can't do what I'm doing now. There's no way of
Right.
interacting. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Okay.
Just an observation.
Harry, you have a comment?
One thing that would address that is our policy F12. The specific goals of the reserve funds is first, preservation of capital, second, liquidity, and third and last, rate of return. Because it's the people's money, and we need to preserve the capital to make sure it's there for replacement of buildings, equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So as happened a year and a half ago, that $40 million become $35 million in a big hurry, invested in bond funds. So the preservation of capital is number one priority, so the money's there to take care of the people.
To the microphone, please. Because we're recording, if you do it from your seat, we won't hear it.
Again, these numbers are just generic, but you're not preserving. Okay, when you preserve, when inflation is eating away at you, you're not preserving. And please don't look at 1 year return, okay? Because you have to look at a grouping of returns, okay? 1, 3, 5, so forth and so on. You're not preserving. You lost money. You went $35 million. You went down. If you would have just lousy 5 years, the stock market's up 50%. That 30 million should have been 45. You had nothing. Oh, excuse me, I don't mean to be, my attitude shouldn't be defensive. I'm suggesting that if you looked at, a 50-50 portfolio of these two basic funds, you should have been up 25% right now. Okay, last year was a big hit, but you still made money in the 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Okay, so you're not preserving. Liquidity, holy smokes, we can sell and we don't have capital gains tax, we don't have none of this stuff. Man, that's liquid. Anyway.
Okay, I would recommend on the website, there is a form if you would like to be considered to be on his committee, fill that out and
Okay.
Dick will consider you. All right?
And we will be filling 2 positions this year on the Budget and Finance Committee. So if you're interested, and I would say that to anyone that's listening and anyone in this room, is that you have to file, you have to go through the bureaucracy of making an application, and then we'll handle, I'll be interviewing people later on.
Just point of clarification, the chairman of the committees has not been named yet. So Dick is referring to his position. And the chairman of that committee, whoever that might be, will be sure to look at that. All right, seeing no more comments. Oh, you have one? All right, come up to the microphone, sir. Sorry.
I just wanted to find out, I'm new to Sun City West relatively and brand new to,
Name and number, please.
oh, my name is David Bennett. Rec number is 137887. I didn't know which forum, I just have a kind of a complaint, I guess, and I didn't know where to present it. So here I'm just trying to find out information.
Complain away.
Okay, well, my wife and I rented down here over the years, quite a few times, sometimes for long periods of time. We had temporary rec cards. I participated in softball, and I enjoy softball, and the other clubs and things. And so one of our decisions to buy a house after we rented here a long time was the softball teams that I participated on, things of that nature. And then after I'm here, I don't know anything about the politics or anything else, but then it's almost like a bait and switch. The friends I had from Sun City, I had no idea where people lived, most of them. But then suddenly, I can no longer play co-ed because we don't have enough players in Sun City West. It just messed up everything. And I feel that the things that, it was a big decision to play or to buy a house down here because of what's available. And then they change after I'm participating and buy a house and living here for almost 2 years now. Then they change the whole format on me. And so, and every year we had a vote. And the last vote, the majority, even though it was slim, still voted to stay the way it was. And yet, somehow or another, I'm no longer being able to play with my friends on the teams that I like, and I just miss it. And I just wanted to comment, and I didn't know. I appreciate you listening to me. So.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Last chance. All right, if not, we're going to adjourn the meeting at 10:27. Thank you very much for attending.